The bell above the cafe door gave a soft chime as a man stepped inside, shaking the drizzle off his jacket. The scent of roasted beans and warm cinnamon drifted through the air, wrapping around him like a familiar comfort he hadn't felt in years. He looked out of place there, slightly hunched, quiet, dressed in an old flannel shirt that didn't quite fit. To anyone watching, he was just another traveler stopping for a quick cup of coffee on a gray morning. But underneath that worn disguise was Jordan Hale, a man worth more than most people in the entire county combined. The world knew him as the founder of a billion-dollar tech company. The town of Redwood Creek, Ohio, however, had no idea that the man sitting quietly at the corner table was that very same Jordan who once filled magazine covers and financial news feeds. He didn't come here for business. He came to disappear. After his wife passed away 3 months earlier, Jordan couldn't stand the empty mansion, the forced smiles at board meetings, or the pitying looks from investors. He wanted silence, not the kind his money could buy, but the kind that felt human again. And somehow, that search brought him here, to this small-town coffee bar called Morning Station, the kind of place where regulars sat in the same booths for decades and everyone's laughter overlapped like music. Jordan took a seat near the window, rubbing his hands together to warm them. The barista behind the counter turned, her soft voice carrying across the room. "Morning, stranger," she said. He looked up, and froze for a moment. The woman behind the counter was young, early 30s maybe, with deep brown skin and a natural grace that couldn't be taught. Her hair was tied in a bun, and her apron was dusted with flour. Her name tag read Naomi. Something about her eyes, bright yet calm, made him forget his loneliness for a moment. "Morning," he replied, clearing his throat. "Could I just get a black coffee?" "Of course," she said, her tone kind but brisk, as if she'd already read his whole story in a glance. "Any sugar?" "No, thank you." She nodded, turning toward the machine. The sound of steam filled the air as she poured, stirred, and placed the cup before him with practiced care. He took a sip. It was strong, bitter, and perfect. "You make this yourself?" he asked. "Every cup," she said with a small smile. "Can't trust anyone else with the first coffee of the day." Jordan smiled faintly. "Well, you've got talent." "I'll take that as a tip," she said with a wink before returning to the counter. For the first time in weeks, Jordan felt something other than grief. There was an ease about her presence, a warmth that didn't demand anything in return. As he sipped his drink, he watched Naomi greet others, a mechanic in oil-stained clothes, a teacher carrying lesson plans, an elderly couple who shared a single muffin between them. She treated them all the same, like old friends, not customers. He couldn't remember the last time someone had treated him that way. When he finished his cup, he left a $20 bill on the counter for a drink that cost $3. Naomi frowned slightly. "Hey," she said, calling after him. "You overpaid." He paused by the door, meeting her gaze. "Maybe the coffee was worth more than you think." She tilted her head, studying him curiously as he left. The next morning, he returned. And the next. Every day, Naomi was there, smiling, hustling, remembering everyone's orders. Jordan began to linger longer after his coffee, helping her restock napkins or carry boxes from the back. He told her he was a former software engineer taking time off to travel and find a little peace. It wasn't entirely a lie. Naomi didn't pry. But she had a way of talking that peeled layers off people without trying. He learned she'd grown up in Redwood Creek her whole life, that she was raising her teenage son alone, and that she dreamed of expanding Morning Station into a small chain of family-run cafes someday. When she laughed, it was soft but genuine, like she didn't laugh often but meant it when she did. One rainy afternoon, as the shop emptied, Jordan stayed behind to help her close up. He was stacking chairs when he noticed her rubbing her wrist, wincing slightly. "You all right?" he asked. "Just a little tired," she said. "Been working double shifts all week." "You run this place alone?" She nodded. "Pretty much." The owner retired 2 years ago, and I sort of stepped in. Couldn't let it close. Too many memories here. Must be hard, he said quietly. She smiled faintly. Everything worth keeping usually is. Something about that sentence hit him deep. They talked until the rain stopped, about loss, dreams, and what it meant to keep going when life didn't give you any reason to. When Jordan finally left that night, he stood outside under the streetlight for a long time, staring back at the cafe windows glowing against the darkness. He realized something terrifying. He wanted to come back, not as an escape, but because this place, and this woman, made him feel alive again. Days passed. Weeks even. Jordan kept coming, and Naomi kept pretending not to notice how he always waited until closing time. Their friendship grew quietly, carefully. But one night, everything changed. It was a Friday, the cafe unusually busy. Naomi was juggling orders, and Jordan, without being asked, got up to help. He carried trays, poured water, wiped tables. Customers teased her that she'd found herself a helper. She laughed but said nothing. Later, after everyone left, she looked at him, hands on her hips. "You really don't have to keep doing this," she said. "I know," he said. "But I want to." She studied him for a long moment, then said softly, "You're not who you say you are you?" The question caught him off guard. "What makes you think that?" Naomi smiled gently. "Because people who've been through real struggle don't move like you. You've got the hands of someone who's never needed to ask for anything." He didn't know what to say. She shrugged lightly. "It's all right. Everyone's got a story. You'll tell me when you're ready." And then she turned away, humming softly, as if she hadn't just peeled open his soul. Jordan sat there, staring at his reflection in the window. She was right. He had spent years hiding behind his success, behind a name that meant nothing without the man inside it. But for the first time, he wanted someone to see the real him. The next morning, Naomi didn't show up. A young cashier explained that her son, Caleb, had been in an accident the night before. A car had run a red light. He was at the local hospital, stable but hurt. Jordan didn't think twice. He drove there immediately. When he walked into the dimly lit hospital room, Naomi looked up, surprised. "Jordan. What are you doing here?" "I heard," he said simply. "I wanted to make sure you're okay." Caleb lay asleep, his arm in a cast. Naomi looked exhausted, dark circles beneath her eyes. "You didn't have to come," she said softly. "I know," he said. "But I wanted to." For a moment, silence hung between them. Then, her voice trembled slightly. "He's all I have. If anything happened to him." She couldn't finish. Jordan sat beside her and said quietly, "He's going to be fine. I promise." Something in his tone made her look at him differently, like she could tell there was more behind those words. The following week, when she returned to work, the bills from the hospital started coming in. Jordan knew she couldn't afford them. He made a few quiet calls. By the next day, the hospital confirmed an anonymous donor had paid everything in full. When Naomi found out, she stood frozen behind the counter, tears welling in her eyes. "Who would do something like that?" she whispered. Jordan, standing quietly at his usual seat, only smiled and said, "Maybe someone who believes in what's worth keeping." She looked at him strangely then, eyes filled with unspoken gratitude. "You always say things like that," she murmured. "Like you've already lived 10 lives." He looked down, unsure how to respond. And then she said it, 3 simple words that made his heart stop completely. "You remind me." He lifted his eyes slowly. "Of who?" Her lips trembled as she whispered, "Of my father." Jordan froze, his mind reeling. He didn't even realize he was gripping the edge of the counter until his knuckles turned white. Because in that moment, something clicked, a memory he'd buried for years. A construction worker who once helped build his company's first office. A man who disappeared after an accident that was never properly investigated. And the name of that man was Samuel Brooks. The same name written on the tag hanging from the chain around Naomi's neck. Jordan's world seemed to stop spinning for a moment. The clinking of cups, the low hum of conversation in the café, everything faded into a distant blur. He stared at the small silver tag hanging from Naomi's necklace, catching the soft glow of the afternoon sun. Samuel Brooks, it read. His throat tightened as memories flashed in rapid bursts: construction sites, paperwork, a dusty trailer where he'd once shaken hands with a man who'd believed in him before anyone else did. A man who'd refused to accept a large bonus because he said, money doesn't mean much if it costs your soul. That man was Naomi's father. And he had died working on one of Jordan's early buildings, a project that made Jordan's company famous but left behind a tragedy buried under insurance clauses and corporate excuses. Jordan hadn't known the full story. Back then, his company had been growing fast, and he'd trusted others to handle the aftermath. But seeing Naomi now, realizing who her father was, it hit him like a punch to the chest. Naomi noticed the color drain from his face. Jordan. Are you okay? He forced a faint smile. Yeah, I'm fine. But he wasn't. Every time he looked at her, guilt surged in his chest. She was the daughter of the man whose death had helped launch his empire. And she had no idea. That night, Jordan drove aimlessly through the quiet streets of Redwood Creek. The rain returned, drumming against the windshield as he pulled over by the lake outside town. He sat there, gripping the steering wheel, staring into the dark water. He could have driven away. Left this place and buried the truth again. But he couldn't. He owed her the truth, and maybe, in some impossible way, a chance to make things right. The next morning, he arrived at the cafe early, before opening. Naomi was already there, wiping the counter, humming softly. When she saw him, she smiled faintly. You're early, she said. He nodded. Couldn't sleep. You look like you've got something on your mind. He hesitated. The words tangled in his throat. Naomi, your father, Samuel Brooks, how much do you know about what happened? She frowned slightly, setting down the rag. Not much. He was working construction out in Chicago when the scaffolding collapsed. They said it was an accident. The company sent us some money, but it didn't bring him back. Her voice cracked on the last word, but she forced a small smile. Why do you ask? Jordan's stomach turned. Because I knew him. She blinked, surprised. You knew my father? He nodded slowly. He worked for me. On one of my first buildings. Naomi's eyes widened in shock. You. He swallowed hard. My real name isn't Jordan Hale. It's Jordan Hale, yes, but I'm not just some traveler. I'm the founder of Hale Industries. The company that built that tower in Chicago. Naomi's mouth opened slightly, but no sound came out. She stared at him as if trying to process whether this was a cruel joke or a confession. I didn't know what happened back then, he continued. They told me it was handled, that the families were compensated and everything was taken care of. I believed them. But when you said your father's name, he paused, his voice breaking. I realized I've been living off the success that cost your family everything. Naomi's hands trembled as she leaned against the counter. So, what are you saying? You came here because you felt guilty? No, he said quickly. I didn't even know it was you until yesterday. But I can't walk away now knowing what I know. Her eyes filled with tears, anger and confusion battling in her expression. You have any idea what it was like for us after he died? My mom worked herself sick just trying to keep food on the table. We lost our house. I dropped out of college to take care of her and Caleb. All while your company kept building towers and celebrating milestones. Her voice cracked into a shout, and the cafe fell silent except for the hum of the espresso machine. Jordan stood there, unable to defend himself. Every word she said was true. "I can't undo what happened," he said quietly. "But I can try to make things right." She let out a bitter laugh. "Make things right? You think writing a check will fix that?" He shook his head. "No. Not money. I want to rebuild this place, the cafe, your future, whatever dream your father would have wanted for you." Naomi wiped her tears roughly. "You don't get it, do you? You can't just throw redemption around like it's on sale. You live in a world where you can buy forgiveness. I live in one where I have to earn it every day." Jordan lowered his gaze. "You're right." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The rain outside grew heavier, streaking the windows with silver lines. Finally, Naomi whispered, "I don't know if I can forgive you." He nodded. "I wouldn't expect you to." He started to leave, but her voice stopped him. "Why now, Jordan? Why tell me at all?" He turned back, his eyes heavy. "Because your father once told me that success without honesty was the slowest kind of failure. I failed him. I won't fail you." Naomi looked away, silent. He walked out the door and disappeared into the rain. For the next several days, Naomi didn't see him. But she saw the changes, small things at first. The broken door handle was fixed. The leaky roof patched. The sign outside freshly painted. She asked the handyman who'd paid for it, but he just shrugged. A week later, the cafe received a letter addressed to her. Inside was a note in simple handwriting. "Naomi. Your father once believed that people could build something beautiful from pain. This cafe is your heart, and I want it to stand for everything he taught us both. No signatures, no cameras, no press. Just a promise. Jordan." Beneath the note was a set of documents transferring ownership of the building and full renovation funding, to her name. Naomi sat at the counter, tears streaming down her cheeks as she read the letter again and again. She didn't know whether to be angry or grateful. Maybe both. That night, she walked to the small inn where he'd been staying. The clerk said he'd checked out that morning, left before sunrise. He was gone. Months passed. The cafe was thriving again. The walls were freshly painted, the furniture new, and a small plaque hung near the door that read, "Dedicated to Samuel Brooks, a man who built with his hands and his heart." Naomi often caught herself glancing toward the window where Jordan used to sit, wondering if she'd ever see him again. One chilly December evening, as the cafe prepared to close, the door opened, and there he was. Same soft eyes. Same quiet presence. Only now, no disguise. He wore a tailored coat, his hair neatly cut, looking every bit the man she'd seen once on the news. "Evening," he said softly. Naomi froze for a moment, then smiled faintly. "You're late for coffee." "Maybe," he said, stepping closer. "But I was hoping the barista still remembered my order." She handed him a cup, her hand steady this time. "Black. No sugar." He smiled. "Still perfect." There was a pause, a long, comfortable silence. Naomi finally said, "I don't hate you anymore." Jordan's eyes softened. "That's more than I deserve." She shook her head. "You did what most people wouldn't. You faced it." He looked down, then met her eyes. "Your father once told me that building something real takes time. Maybe forgiveness does too." Naomi smiled gently. "Maybe it does." They stood there for a while, the world outside blanketed in snow, the cafe lights casting a warm glow around them. For the first time in years, Jordan felt something more powerful than success, peace. And for Naomi, the man who once represented everything she lost had become a reminder that even broken stories can be rebuilt, one honest step at a time. The cafe doors closed at night with laughter echoing softly in the air, and the sign outside glowed under the snowfall. Sometimes, redemption doesn't come with applause. Sometimes, it starts quietly, over a cup of coffee, between two people brave enough to face the truth.